there is over quite a while regarding the discussion, or rather the conduct of the media in the country. And tonight, as we take you through the conduct of media in person, we ask you a very special question regarding the conduct of this particular media. Do you think, of course, the media has lost its way as far as journalistic standards are concerned? More than often, many media houses have found themselves on the receiving end from both Kenyans and politicians regarding the state of reporting matters, be it biased from one side, that is, depending on who is accusing that particular media. Have we lost our real journalistic standards? Of course, I'll be joined in this particular conversation by one and only Kennedy Mureithi, that is the chairperson of Kenya Journalists Association, of course, that is political Kenya Journalists Association, and Ferdinand Omondi, the BBC reporter. Of course, as we divert through this particular discussion, just to try and look at where we might have gone wrong or even return sanity, or is just a speculation. But before that, as our reporters have been working round the clock to bring you up to speed with the latest development here in the country and across the globe. But first thing first, here is what is coming up next. Tonight, bipartisan talks and demos. Azimio's anti-government mass action returns in a week's time amid talks with government. Douglas Kanja takes oath of office as new Deputy Inspector General of Police. Also tonight, ignore the rumors. Education Cabinet Secretary Hegel Matogu rubbishes exam cheating claims in Kisii schools. Plus, small and medium enterprise businesses, a strategic pillar to Kenya's industrial growth, says the government. Many thanks for joining us tonight. Of course, my sign language interpreter tonight is Sami Okello. My name is AUMA Evans. Remember, we invite your feedback and comments on this particular broadcast on all of our social media platforms. On Facebook at KUTV Kenya, on Twitter at KUTV_Kenya, at AUMA Evans. Remember to use the hashtag Primetime News. And our Primetime News begins right away. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition has today met with civil society representatives at Fungano House. The coalition leader Raila Odinga has stated that they will give directions, on the resumption of protest once observation of Ramadan is over. He says that the government seems not to be serious on bipartisan parliamentary talks. Joseph Case is on that beat tonight.
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga has today announced that he will give directions on the resumption of coalition protests once the Ramadan period is over. Raila, who was presiding over a function with civil society groups, says that the government has not shown seriousness in engaging in talks with the opposition.
Mazungumzo endelee na maandamano sambamba.
Raila says that the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is only willing to engage in talks that center on collective interests of all Kenyans, even those who did not participate in elections.
We are not going into this dialogue for deals in smoke-filled rooms. We are going into this to secure and safeguard fundamental life and death gains for the people and the country. Throughout the talks, we expect the people to stand on guard and ensure it's about them and the country.
We stood together with Raila Odinga and Martha Karua and Kalonzo, and we unveiled our team. But the manner in which the Kenya Kwanza team was unveiled, ilikuwa njia ya madharau, and we were told by Gachagua, let Raila and Kina Karua waende wa deal na Kimani Ichung'wah. Today we want to say this to William Ruto. Yes, you have your team, we have our team, but your demeanor shows lack of good faith.
Odinga has also reiterated that the coalition is not changing its priorities anytime soon, and that its demands are still centered on the reduction of the cost of living, the opening of IEBC servers, among other contentious matters.
Kenya Kwanza is a regime of rubber stamps. Subsidies are being removed from food, fuel, electricity, and school fees, exposing people to suffering, and Kenya Kwanza rubber stamps it as okay.
Therefore, when we ask for the server, we want the truth to be out. And those who are telling us that the Supreme Court decided, yes, it did, and we disagreed with it, and I do not know how a court of law, let alone the Supreme Court, can allow a foreign company to refuse to open the servers when the Kenyan law, Kenyan constitution, says that the elections must be accountable and verifiable.
Yeah, you can always know when somebody is serious. How do you prefix dialogue with a denial in the first place? Denial that this is it, we are not on it, and we can only discuss IEBC reconstitution.
The coalition leaders have also continued to maintain that Raila won in the last general elections and that their fight for his victory is unwavering. Former Murang'a Governor Mwangi wa Iria is the latest leader to join Azimio in the quest to have their demands addressed. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is set to hold its People's Baraza on Sunday at Kamukunji grounds. The coalition has made a resolution that protests may resume after the holy month of Ramadan, even as the parliamentary bipartisan dialogue continues. Joseph Kes, KUTV, Nairobi.
Right now, moving on, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua received 2 oil tankers sent from United Arab Emirates. That is after the government signed government-to-government deal with UAE's Abu Dhabi's National Oil Corporation, global trading for supply of the automotive gas oil and Jet A1 for 270 days. The 2 crude oil tankers, 252 and 250 meters long tankers, arrive in the country today with loaded 172,191 tons of petrol, diesel, and aviation fuel. He was accompanied by Kenya Ports Authority Chairman Benjamin Tayari, Mombasa Governor Abdul Somad Nasir, and other government officials. The DP says the arrival of the crude oil tankers gives hope that the economy of the country is headed in the right direction. He advised people rather owing US dollars to release them as soon as possible.
Business people, investors who have been holding US dollars for speculation purposes, please offload your dollars to the market today and tomorrow. It's very honest advice from a truthful man. But with what has happened, freeing $500 million US dollars to purchase fuel every month, the demand for the dollar will come down.
Right, Douglas Kanja has been sworn in as Deputy Inspector General of Police in a ceremony held at the Supreme Court. Kanja replaces Edward Mbugua, who retired early this year. The Chief Justice Martha Koome, who presided over the event, encouraged a good relationship between police unit and the public, adding that the police service should perform its duties according to the Constitution.
Deputy Inspector General Douglas Kanja has been sworn in to assist Inspector General of Police Japheth Koome early today at the Supreme Court building, where Chief Justice Martha Koome presided the ceremony. This comes a day after President William Ruto announced his appointment after he emerged top in interviews conducted by the National Police Service Commission last week. President William Ruto has assured the new Deputy Inspector General of Kenya Police of his support while meeting him at State House. The President vowed to ensure the creation of a professional independent police service, adding that welfare of the police is being addressed through a task force that has been formulated. Kanja will now replace Edward Mbugua, who completed his term, and will now have a duty of implementing policies and directions of the service in relation to the National Police Service, preparing the budget, planning and provision of support for the service, undertaking training in the National Police Service, providing internal oversight of the National Police Service, among others. Edward Nyamu, KUTV.
Now, members of parliament affiliated to Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition are pushing for the Jubilee-nominated member of parliament Sabina Chege to be removed as deputy minority chief whip. The quest came in action today afternoon after the minority leader Opiyo Wandayi represent a letter to the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula requesting him to officially relieve the legislator of her duties. Our very own James Muriki now reports.
Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi has presented a letter to National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula requesting him to officially relieve Sabina Chege as the Deputy Minority Chief Whip. Wandayi said that the registrator has displayed a disloyalty to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition after declaring support for President Ruto's government, despite her being in the opposition.
My point is that my letter to you speaks for itself. It's in accordance with the standing orders. It's in accordance with the Constitution. It does not require any further debate. I want to plead with you to uphold the dignity of this House and announce the removal of Honorable Sabina Chege as Deputy Minority Whip, and allow me to send the name of her replacement as soon as I make a decision.
Mr. Speaker, when a member has been seen by their coalition to not be trustworthy, to not be capable of doing that job, Mr. Speaker, it is our right to make a decision on who becomes a whip.
The request by Wandayi, however, infuriated Sabina Chege, who dismissed Wandayi's letter, arguing that the Azimio la Umoja coalition has no authority whatsoever to decide on how the political parties affiliated to the coalition run their affairs. The registrator arguing that her party members in Jubilee Party were not included in the said decision.
There is also freedom of association, which, Mr. Speaker, you have also communicated in this office. So we are free to associate. We are free also to make independent decisions, Mr. Speaker, but we will not be cowed. We will not be intimidated. Mr. Speaker, as it was ruled then when you are removed from the position, now you are at a position, Mr. Speaker, where you can be able to guide this House. I pray that God will give you wisdom, that you give us proper direction.
The decision to remove Sabina Chege as Deputy Minority Chief Whip in Parliament resulted in a heated political debate amongst the members of Parliament, as some opposed Wandayi's call, saying that every registrator in the August House has every right to associate with any political party in the country.
Mr. Speaker, God is fair. What goes around comes around. It's exactly 5 years ago that you are hounded out of an office like this one of Honorable Sabina in a very, unceremonious manner, Mr. Speaker.
The rights of an individual to have association, political rights, and even other rights cannot be taken away by collusions which we enter. And the purportation that by joining a particular political party, you completely lose your right and you can be meddled with despite the existence of the Constitution, that's a matter, Honorable Speaker, I would want you to look at.
I think the matter at hand did not touch on the character or personality of the Honorable Sabina Chege.
The political discourse comes just after the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga, while addressing Azimio parliamentary group meeting 2 weeks ago, declared that any member who allies with the government will be branded a traitor and shoved off from any positions. James Mureke Mwenda, KUTV.
Right, from politics now to education. Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu has maintained his standard that the 2022 Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, that is KCSE, results were credible and processed above par. While appearing before the Parliamentary Committee on Education today, the Education CS defended the last year's KCSE result, holding that there were no irregularities before, during, and after the conduct of the exams.
Thank you, Chairman.
Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu has dismissed claims of alleged malpractices in the 2022 Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exams, whose results were released in January. According to Machogu, the alleged exam irregularities, especially in Kisii and Nyamira counties, were unfounded, as both counties recorded the lowest number of A's in the Nyanza region. The Education Cabinet Secretary also confirmed that in Nyanza region, Siaya County had the highest number of A's with 72, followed by Homa Bay and Migori with 62, and Kisumu with 59. Kisii and Nyamira had the lowest with 51 and 30 respectively. Machogu also noted that Kenya's performance in the high school exam was recorded to be lower compared to Uganda and Tanzania. The pass rate for Kenya in the 2022 exams was recorded at 19.62%, which is equivalent to C+ and above, while that of Tanzania and Uganda is 36.95% and 61.36% respectively. The response by the Cabinet Secretary follows a public notice dated February 2nd, where the Clerk of the National Assembly, Samuel Njoroge, said that the Committee on Education had lodged a public inquiry into the allegations. Ruth Wanjiru for KU TV.
Now to rather some disturbing stories. 3 teachers have been arrested and arraigned in court following the alleged assault of 19-year-old student at the Nyabisia Mixed Secondary School in Kisii County. The teachers are alleged to have brutally punished the student, which resulted to the injuries in his private part. While appearing before Senior Principal Magistrate Paul Biwott, the 3 teachers denied the assault charges and were released at 1,000 bond each. According to Kisii County Police Commander Charles Kasese, 1 teacher and security guard involved in the incident are still missing. Cabinet Secretary for Education Ezekiel Machogu has condemned the incident, terming it as disturbing and criminal.
The accused will be admitted to bail, and I hereby admit them to a bail of 100,000 each, with a surety similar amount. In the alternative, they may have a cash bail of 20,000 each, pending hearing and determination of the suit.
Now, the government says that the micro, small, and medium enterprises are a strategic pillar to Kenya's industrial growth. Speaking during the first ever SME convention organized by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, SMEs and Cooperative Development, Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelegui acknowledged that the government is government is cognizant of and is working towards addressing the sector's challenges. Chelegui says that the Hustler Fund was addressed in part and the funding problem by providing interest loans to SMEs. KUTV's Dennis Omondi with that story.
The Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KAM, brings together players in Kenya's manufacturing and value addition industries and rallies them to speak in one voice. And today, they lent that voice to the micro, small, and medium enterprises.
We are now turning another page. Because of our convening power, we want to build a big ecosystem where we deal with the biggest challenges that face SMEs.
According to MSME and Cooperatives Development CS Simon Chelugui, MSMEs account for up to 30% of Kenya's GDP, with 85% of the MSMEs being in the informal sector. Chelugui believes that this sector has not been tapped fully, as it has the potential to offer more jobs and help push the much-needed growth in Kenya's industrial sector.
MSME constitute 98% of all businesses in Kenya, create 30% of jobs annually, and contribute 3% of GDP growth. Additionally, the sector creates employment of 15 million people with value output of 3.3 trillion, making it a high priority segment.
Kenya Association of Manufacturers already has in place manufacturing priority agenda for the MSMEs, modeled around SME development, export-led growth, industrialization of Kenya's agriculture, and making local products competitive in the global market.
So we've also seen that we have two challenges in supporting MSMEs: access to finance and affordability. And you've seen other initiatives that we came up with, the Hustler Fund. Many of us think Hustler Fund is a very small intervention in terms of amount and quantum. But I want to assure you that on a daily basis, 7 million Kenyans are borrowing and repaying that money.
KAM CEO Anthony Mwangi alluded to their Manufacturing 20 by 30 plan, which will ensure that manufacturing contributes at least 20% to Kenya's GDP and offer 980,000 jobs by 2030, up from 348,000 it provided in 2021.
As what Anthony just mentioned, 30% of our GDP is driven by SMEs. 80% of employment is created by SMEs. We cannot afford to ignore that. And this is why SME stands as a very deliberate fourth pillar in driving our 20 by 30 agenda.
Kenya Kwanza government has already created a standalone ministry for MSMEs to spur their development, in a clear indication of their value to socio-economic well-being of the nation. Dennis Omondi reporting for KUTV.
Right, that story by Dennis Omondi takes us to our first short break here at KUTV. Of course, when we come back, plenty more to follow, including a special discussion tonight. See you in a bit.
Kurunzi ya kilimo huimarisha afya na uchumi endelevu katika jamii. Ni msingi mkubwa wa kipindi Boresha Kilimo. Kipindi hiki kinajikita katika teknolojia ya kisasa, utafiti na ushirikishaji wa wadau wa kilimo kuonyesha shughuli mbalimbali shambani. Kwa suluhu ya utoshelevu wa chakula, tazama Boresha Kilimo.
Access to knowledge, solution to unanswered questions.
Guidelines to pursuing your rights and repossessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more only on Law Matters.
Kipindi hewani ni mitindo ya kipwani, na nipo pwani, nipo Jomvu. Leo tutakuwa tunafanya maandalizi, yani inaitwa ni viungo, yani watoto watakuwa wanahusika kwenye kipindi hiki, watoto wa Uswahilini.
Leo tunatengeneza chungu kwa kutumia mbinu ya kuviringa.
Baada ya kubiringisha, unachukua hii ambayo imebiringishwa, unachanganya hapa juu.
Group will deal with hardware and software development. Hardware, we do PCB design that is based on IoT. So as an engineer, I have trained a couple of people. So this board is compatible with Arduino IDE. You can, it has the Arduino STM Arduino course. This is a Blue Eagle. The difference with the other one is that this one has BLE, which is included in the ESP32.
Kipindi hewani ni mitindo ya kipwani, na niko pwani, niko Jomvu. Leo tutakuwa tunafanya maandalizi, yani inaitwa ni viungo, yani watoto watakuwa wanahusika kwenye kipindi hiki, watoto wa Uswahilini.
Leo tunatengeneza chungu kwa kutumia mbinu ya kuviringa. Baada ya kubiringisha, unachukua hii ambayo imebiringishwa, unachanganya hapa juu.
Group will deal with hardware and software development. Hardware, we do PCB design that is based on IoT. So as an engineer, I have trained a couple of people. So this board is compatible with Arduino IDE. You can, it has the Arduino STM Arduino course. This is a Blue Eagle. The difference with the other one is that this one has BLE, which is included in the ESP32.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audiovisual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
Baada ya kutafuta kazi, tunaweza kuanzisha miradi yetu ambayo ingetusaidia kubadilisha maisha ya wazazi wetu.
Kwa vijana wenzangu, wengi hawana kazi, lakini ikiwa sisi wenyewe tutajiamini, tunaweza kujiajiri wenyewe.
Afrika kwa kweli tuna mahitaji ambayo ukiyasuluhisha unaweza kuathiri watu kwenye bara hili.
Bila uoga, watu huwa na uzalishaji zaidi, wanajawa na ujasiri, wanakuwa wabunifu na wanakuwa wenye maarifa.
Niliamua kuacha kazi, hata kama sitafanikiwa, nitakuwa nimejaribu, nitakuwa najua haiwezekani.
Hakuna kitu cha ajabu hapa. Kila anayepata ufanisi hufanya kazi usiku na mchana.
Kitu kitakusukuma na kuwezesha kupata maarifa ambayo hukuwa nayo.
Tunajaribu kutengeneza kitu kitakachopita mipaka ya nchi hii.
Ikiwa unataka kubadilisha ulimwengu, anza na nyumbani.
What's up, fashionistas? Looking for a show that brings you the latest in the world of fashion, glamour, creativity, and style? get you started as we explore street fashion, modeling, runways, red carpet events, and so much more.
Catch me, Ashley and Sachi, as we unlock the greatest fashion events. Keep it locked.
Right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Of course, this is where we pick that particular discussion. Media houses in Kenya at some point have been accused of being biased when covering issues that scribes to the nation's attention. The latest coming from Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and ODM party leader Raila Odinga. Are we losing the real reputation of journalism as a profession? Now joining me in the discussion is Kennedy Mreithi, the chairperson of Political Journalists Association of Kenya, and Ferdinand Omondi, journalist at BBC, who is now joining us live via Zoom. And of course, I'll start with you, Ferdinand. You have been reporting, of course, political issues for quite a while. Do you think, some politician, of course, and section of Kenyans are right when they say some media houses are biased?
That's a very objective question, I would say. But what I would sort of try to observe is that, from my perspective, media houses in Kenya have largely tried to be as objective as they have been. There has been no evidence of specific leaning media houses towards any political party. I'm speaking to the kinds of references where you see in the UK or the US, where Fox News is Republican, MSNBC is Democrat, or in the UK where we have the likes of the GB News, which is an iteration of Fox in the UK with completely leans towards a conservative party. That has not happened here in Kenya, as far as I know. The bone of contention, I know, has always been with the ownership of these media houses. For instance, in the last two election cycles, the chairman of the Raw Media Services, Macharia, did join Raila Odinga's coalition as a new and before ODM. But he did mention that this had nothing to do with his journalist objectivity, and you can have now your own arguments about that, but also right from the media from the media houses that they tried their best to be as balanced as you can. There have been other concerns about perhaps individual journalists who may not be as objective as they can, also claims that some of the journalism is influenced by brown envelopes, and if there are individual cases where people do this, then you cannot shame the whole organization. You don't shame the whole media house like the deputy president did, and that's my bone of contention. If there are individual journalists who have not been straight, you cannot then paste the entire fourth estate of Kenya with over 200 media houses to say that they're not objective. That, I think, would be unfair.
All right. Well, Mreithi, you have had Deputy President, of course, on numerous occasions, pointing out at media for being biased. And most of the time, media has been under fire for what they term as being biased. In your own perspective, do you think media houses in Kenya have been biased?
Well, I don't think so. Even when something happens and you're looking for a scapegoat, the easiest thing to do is to hit out at the person who's nearest to you, and you vent out all the anger on this particular person. I think in this particular case, the media has been a scapegoat for the inadequacies that have been witnessed in certain quarters of government where something must have been done, yet it was not done. The media house, any media house worth its salt, cannot go to the extent of wanting to disparage the stature of a deputy president or a president just for the sake of it. I do not want to go into that direction. And as Ferdinand, my senior, says, this is a case of individual journalists who probably had taken a stand on what they want to do. But you cannot blame the whole of media and say that they are biased, yet what is supposed to have been done is that the key tenet of journalism is to put authority to what they say.
Right.
If you tell us that you're going to give us something in 100 days, if those 100 days have passed and I do a story saying that you were supposed to do this and you have not done, it is not upon you to now tell me that I am trying to incite people against you. Those were not my words.
All right. Well, Ferdinand, what does impartial journalism looks like to you?
I think that's a very big debate nowadays, isn't it? In exactly what impartial journalism is. And if you look at what we're being told in the media houses right now, it's no longer about 5WH, who did what, where, when, why, and how. Nowadays, if you look at social media, if something happens, you will know what has happened even before a journalist comes to tell you what happened. So then the onus is upon us as journalists to try and make sense of the story. How I work is, you tell the story, what is happening, and why is it important. And the only part where impartiality is very important, and this is where most journalists perhaps go wrong, not most journalists, but those who do go wrong, is that, and this is also controversial, is where they put their opinions on it. Now, there are two ways to look at it. There is opinion and there is context. If I am, for instance, covering the ongoing demonstrations or the going impasse between the government and the opposition, then I will have to explain what is happening. I would say that President William Ruto, for instance, was declared the winner of the election, and the resultant case presented to the Supreme Court by the opposition was nullified. That is context. And then I say, however, the opposition refuses to recognize the presidency of William Ruto, insisting that they won based on evidence which they have not yet presented. That is objective. And then I said, this is why you need to know it's important, because this is one of the grounds which is leading the opposition to call for protests in Kenya. Now, the government may not want us to cover those protests, as you've seen, because they think it is inconvenient. But this is something that is happening in Kenya. This is something that is important to cover. This is something that is going to affect people who are going to take their children to school, who cannot go to school with their protests, especially when they turn violent. You have to look at the circumstances under which business have been stopped. When the government says that 2 billion shillings was lost within a very short period of time because of protests, surely that is something that the public will want to know. What is the effect of these protests? And you don't just cover the protests without giving the context behind it. Now, if you look at what we call impartiality and what the politicians perhaps you would argue would want, on the side of Raila Odinga, he does not recognize William Ruto as president. Now, I wouldn't be objective or impartial if I just called him William Ruto. See, he is the president, legally speaking, by dint of him being declared winner and sworn in. So he's the president whether Raila Odinga likes it or not in this context. But he says this election was stolen, so he refuses to recognize it, and that will let the audience decide. On the side of the government, you saw the communication authority telling the media to exercise restraint when covering this, and there were concerns about whether this was also a bit of government trying to overstretch its regulatory hand to prevent the media from covering it. Now, if the opposition gives what they feel are the requirements or their conditions for holding these talks or for ending the protests, and they say that these servers need to be opened, and they're saying that the government needs to respect multi-party democracy, and they are questioning about the cost of living, which you all can see is happening. It is our job to tell the public this is what the opposition is saying, and the people will decide, and you'll have to report on that whether the government likes it or not. And good journalism a lot of people will say, is the kind of journalism that makes people uncomfortable because you're saying things that people might not want you to say. The rest of it is public relations. So these attacks perhaps is, on the flip side, might be a justification that the media in Kenya is doing its job. A lot of the time when the government praises you for doing your job well, you're not doing it well.
Right. I saw you nodding. Do you want to add something on that?
I agree with my senior totally 101%. And one of the biggest casualties of such remarks from politicians are the political journalists. And the association which I head, the Kenya Political Journalists Association of Kenya, these people have brought these complaints to us saying that there are remarks that are coming out and they are actually impeding on the job that we're doing. Ferdinand has just reported and shed light on what he believes is impartiality. When you're reporting facts as they are, and as long as they're making them uncomfortable, then we know that we are doing our job. But these cases are on the rise. Remember, we are coming in from a government where they believe that they won without the conventional media. They believe that the social media is the future. So some of the journalists who are working in the conventional media and those that are working in the mainstream media, like KUTV, some of these people are at a risk because these sentiments, the more they continue coming from the highest echelons of power in this country, then these particular journalists who are out there are putting their lives in danger. Remember, we have seen instances where journalists who have covered stories about specific politicians, including Raila Odinga in this country, who have been hit once they attend press conferences, and immediately you introduce yourself, then a number of young men who are there will quickly remember that it is you who reported something about Raila that was not palatable to them. So in a way, these words are putting our members, and we have about 5,000 members, in danger in whatever part of this country they are coming from. In Nairobi, it is less chaotic. In the counties, it is more serious, where the number of politicians who are there are not as many. Because remember, all these politicians come to Nairobi. In the county, you will have the governor, who is one, probably the deputy governor. A constituency, the county has probably about 8 to 7 constituencies. Then you have the members of county assembly. If these people decide that you will not report in that particular area, then it becomes chaos. And our journalists have told us that sentiments from politicians are becoming a serious threat, not just for devolved journalists, but also for journalists who are here in Nairobi. So whether there is a matter of bias, just like Raila Odinga was told when he announced a ban on the Star newspaper, he was asked to go to the complaints department of the Media Council of Kenya. That is what we will urge any politician, any person, any organization that has a problem with a journalist in this country where they do believe that their story was not covered properly, then they have a channel to go through. Mob justice will not help, as an eye for an eye will make us all blind.
All right. Before I come to you, Ferdinand, you spoke about, the perception outside there. If Raila Odinga today says the Star is biased, then Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua names maybe certain media house being biased. Outside there, they have followers, and specific journalists will be targeted. How does it, create the impact that it creates in, media houses and even the journalists themselves? Just how big is it?
When you light a candle and you put it under a bed, it will still shine bright.
All right.
And it will still look for a way of making sure that it shines bright. What will happen next is the possibility that it will burn the mattress and make sure that you see the light that it emanates. Now, coming to your question, once Raila Odinga says that I call upon my supporters to boycott the Star, he's already created a new market for the Star. Those that support this other side of the divide will want to buy this particular newspaper because it will be believed that it is telling the stories that are palatable to the powers that be. That is one. Two, the other channels that were used to make sure that this banning that was imposed by Raila Odinga to his millions of supporters, which we do not disagree. Because if it is not Raila Odinga and the support that he has, then there is a probability that we will not be having the kind of news that we have. He is causing trouble to the government by agitating for what he believes is right according to him through the media and through the support base that he has created. So there was a channel that was used to make sure that this particular ban that had been imposed by Raila Odinga was rescinded the next day. I do believe that those are the same channels that should have been used to make sure that that matter does not escalate. Because number one, as I have said and you've asked, it puts journalists in danger. And number two, it can go both ways. Those that will not support that newspaper are going to, and were supporting it, are going to be lost, right. But they are also going to gain on this other side. Right. I remember a case in point in 2007. One of the leading newspapers in Kenya could not be sold in the Western and the Nyanza region because it was believed that it was pro-Kibaki. The impact of that was detrimental in that particular part of the country. And the other newspaper that had been believed to be telling the Raila Odinga story could not sell on this other side. Mm-hmm. It has had effects until today. Those two major newspapers, as much as they tried to gain the markets, the respective markets in the Nyanza and the Mount Kenya region, there is a serious disparity. So such sentiments go on to put journalists in danger and also to spoil the market for journalists, leading to job losses.
All right. Well, Ferdinand, you know, when perception is created about some media house being, of course, biased, then it means we lose the credibility of journalism and all that it stands for. But maybe in a case scenario like Pakistan, where most of the citizens think that this is just another person's opinion, do you think if Kenya, of course, head to that direction, do you think that will, of course, even lower the standards of journalism in the country?
You need to know that right now we live in the world where disinformation propaganda is a very potent tool. Let's also not forget that Kenya itself is a country which was subject to verified disinformation targeted through social media, where a now disgraced company curated information based on very private details they found from the likes of Facebook on the social media apps to drive a certain agenda and to drive a sense of fear toward a certain politician to help the other side to win the election. One of the political parties has come forward to say they have a communications wing, which is essentially a propaganda wing, distributed all over the country with the aim of countering any sort of information that comes against it. On the other hand, we also have bloggers who have absolutely no accountability before the law and no ethics in terms of in comparison to what the media go through. Now, all this is a mishmash of very dangerous information that can get to the people. And sometimes the only people who stand between the public, the politicians, and the propagandists is the media. Now, if you demonize the entire media house as is, the Media Council has pointed out that you, first of all, risk denting the image and the trust that these media houses have, including those journalists who do not really have any sort of bias in them. And I can tell you why. I, for instance, have been profiled very many times simply because of my surname. Every time I tweet anything about Azimio, you can go and check my tweets right now. There'll be somebody who will making references to the fact that my name because there's already been created a bias that anybody who is Luo belongs to Azimio. My friend Reddy, who sits next to you right there, if he wants to share that story again, I'm not going to go to it, but there's a time when there also references that was made to his surname at a public press conference which had ramifications, and these were based on the assumption that because he was who he is, then questions he was asking was linked to his community and the political party that community is supposed to be supporting. We all have our opinions, we all have our leanings. Journalists go and vote during elections, but we do not take our opinions to work. However, in the advancement of the political agenda of a lot of these politicians, and this is not just in Kenya, this is all over the world, the first thing you want to do when you want to slaughter a lamb is to fatten.
All right. It seems like we have lost him on that, signal. He
says, gives you context in terms of what you're saying, so that makes sense to people. That becomes a problem.
All right. Okay, now Ferdinand says if you want to, slaughter a cow, you must first fatten it. I don't know what those sentiment means, but we are talking about a very important issue here. And in regards to all this about propaganda and all things in between. And one of the key things that have really emerged is, fake journalism. And we have a case scenario where information are being disseminated everywhere. People access to information, but at the end of the day, the biggest casualties are the journalists themselves. How do you navigate in such scenario whereby you separate fact from propaganda, at the same time maintaining the integrity of the media house?
Well, that's a very good question that should be asked to every journalist. How do you fall for propaganda? How do you follow for such? It is often said that anything false or a lie will travel half the world even before the truth gets to where it pans. Mm-hmm. So you as a journalist working for a credible media house have been given a badge, not just for the media house that you work for, but from the Media Council of Kenya, an institution that we believe in so much. This institution and this media house that has given you this badge believes in the ability that you have in disseminating and looking for news. So the moment you hear somebody say something that is false, the first thing you need to do is to confirm. Mm-hmm. The most important tenet of journalism is to confirm. Never rush to break something that you're not sure about. If you cannot reach a source, ask your editor to reach that source for you. And this happens across board. There are so many people, including the people that are watching us today, that have been lied to by people who are purporting to be journalists, and they are swindling them of money. Number one, there is no story that you should ever pay for. And that's what people don't know. You can never pay for a story. And paying for a story, that means that that person is an extortionist. So we have had a clique of extortionists who are masquerading as journalists and trying to dent the good name that the journalist has gone to school to study about. They will go hang out where politicians are. They will go even to unsuspecting people who want to air stories, and they will present themselves as the go-between them and this person and the media house. So the fake news, one of the ways to do away with it is just go to either you're watching KUTV, you're watching NTV, you're watching Citizen, you're watching any other media house. In this era of social media, somebody might just wake up today and say such and such a matter has happened. But you have to confirm, and reconfirm. Just go to the KU Facebook page or to their website and see, has this story been posted there? If it has not been posted, first of all, take the information that you're being given with a pinch of salt. As the Political Journalists Association of Kenya, we have put together a team of journalists whom we've given the mandate to make sure that every day they fact check what has been said. There are also think tanks in this country, one of them led by one of the biggest journalists that we have in Kenya, who has been there, called Alphonse Shiundu, a member of the Political Journalists Association. Their think tank goes ahead to fact check everything that is said on a daily basis. So for you who is watching us tonight, never be screwed over by somebody who wants to tell you that the information is true and yet it is not. When you see it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or even TikTok, just make sure that you confirm from the conventional sources of media.
All right.
Or even if it has been said about a specific person, go to that person's page and see what is there. Because there is a lot of falsehood that is going on, and propaganda as a tool has been used by politicians, yes, but it is now percolating to the people who want to even get more views. That's why I'm a strong, I don't know what Ferdinand's point would be or what his views would be, but I'm a strong believer that there must be some regulations on how these people called bloggers and social media users should be regulated so that they do not spread falsehoods about serious matters in this country and in this world.
All right. Well, Ferdinand, one of the key things, and if I may quote, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, one of the things that he was really lamenting about is fairness. He called some headline in the newspaper as, sponsored headline, misinformation regarding, him. He quote, and some time back he said people misquote him of what he says. In scenarios like that one, of which, the accountability, fact-checking, everything about the media ethics and conduct, how do you deal with such cases, even as we wind up this particular discussion?
Yes, first of all, I'll agree with Kennedy that regulation is also needed on the blogger side. There is a Computer and Cybercrimes Act, but also when doing these regulations, it's important to make sure that the government doesn't take advantage of that, again, now to stifle freedom of expression. Sometimes it comes to the courts where disinformation comes in, and perhaps that's where mainstream media and responsible citizen journalists step in. In terms of where we get, in terms of what the Deputy President said, and I don't like to have a go at him, but when you speak about disinformation and then you say a headline is sponsored, are you not then giving disinformation if you do not have facts that that headline was sponsored? It is very okay to be aggrieved, and that's why, as Kennedy said, there is a Media Complaints Commission to deal with those instances where we feel, or you feel, or somebody else feels that a story was unfair. But if you just don't like how a headline was written, or you don't like the nuance, or you don't like the story within, that if it does not break any law, then there is nothing wrong with that story. Like I did say, the role of journalists is to give context in a wide spectrum of things. And sometimes, and I have done stories sometimes, even in sports, when you go and you say, the goalkeeper messed that or dropped the ball, the goalkeeper will read and say, why are you writing a story that's very harsh about me? They feel offended, but if it was a goalkeeper mistake, it was a goalkeeper mistake. All right. If a business decision has been made, like right now we hear that Kenya allegedly wanted to order so many bags of maize from Zimbabwe and bring it here, and the farmers complained, and we highlight that. Are we being against the government? No, we are telling them what exactly the farmers feel about these policies. The role of the media is to question all this. Now, if there is a sense that things are not going right, they have every right to approach individual journalists, individual media houses through proper channels so that these can be resolved. But what I am absolutely against is blatant attacks in a country that claims to pride itself in the rule of law. This rule of law must not just be said as a matter of conjecture, it has to be seen to be practiced. And on our side as media, we have as a responsibility to be very objective in how we report our news. I have seen newsrooms have become fair that some people have had very serious political leanings that sometimes can seep into their stories. Like I did mention earlier, we do vote, so we do have the people who we support. But it's very important to look at how we report our stories, so that when you go and cover a story, leave all your opinions and your biases aside and try as much as possible to be objective, because that is the only way to restore trust. There are many instances where some people will admit that there have been mistakes which have been made, and this is not just in Kenya. Across the world, you've seen instances where journalists have made mistakes and they have been held to account. And that is exactly how we go about it. Because even in Parliament, you have seen MPs admit to taking bribes or even smoking banks. Some of them have been mentioned by their own ministers to be suspected drug dealers and being investigated. Do we say that this entire Parliament is full of thieves and robbers and murderers and rapists? No, we don't, because that then won't be objective. So objective criticism is very important. It goes both ways, and they too have the right of speech. But there's a limit where now you are fomenting incitement that could harm media houses' standing or the reputation of the entire media fraternity unfairly. And in some instances, as we have seen, physical attacks based on supporters who misinterpret your criticism, which is borderline incitement.
All right, thank you. Well, just 1 minute because we are running out of time, and I'd like you to talk about the accountability, even as you give us your parting shot.
Media should be accountable. That's non-negotiable. The media must and should always be accountable. We cannot run away from accountability because we do not report to ourselves, and neither are we a law unto ourselves. The people who wake up in the morning every day and sleep and watch us every day must and should expect nothing less than the truth and fairness.
All right.
When those who say that we are not fair, the burden of proof is on them.
Okay.
But for a media, a journalist worth their salt, they have no other reason other than to be accountable to the people who wake up in the morning to watch them.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time, of course, to have this very important discussion about the conduct and, of course, the conduct of media and how things should be run. Of course, we take a short break. Up next is sports news.
We are all seeing the impacts of climate change. In Kenya, for example, the frequency of the floods is becoming more and worse. The amount of people and livestock we're losing.
Is a level where the normal mwananchi and also the government stakeholders can uptake these solutions.
Those small acts multiplied by millions of us will help make a difference in the world at the end of the day.
It's just a slight behavior change that we need, and you'll find that it serves us a bit more than you put in. And that's the goal. We want to live a better world than we found, because at the rate we are going, it's dire.
We will secure the planet for future generations.
Vijana wazee, wende wote, kina baba
right, welcome back, and now it's time for sporty action. Kenya rugby team Chipu will launch their quest to win the Rugby Africa Under-20 Bath Cup against rivals Uganda in the quarter-finals, slated for 22nd of April this year at Nyayo National Stadium at 4:30 p.m., with the winners set to meet either former champions Namibia or Zambia in the semi-finals. Defending champions Zimbabwe will open the busy day against Cote d'Ivoire, with the 2021 losing finalist Madagascar taking on the Tunisia. Chipu failed to reach the finals for the first time last year when they lost to Namibia 16-5 in the semi-finals. Zimbabwe, who reached the finals for the first time, went on to beat Namibia 19-14 to lift the trophy. Alright, that's all we had for you this particular evening. Many thanks for keeping us a company in the next 1 hour or so. Of course, Samuel Kelo has been our sign language interpreter tonight. My name is AUMA Evans. Bye bye for now. See you next time. Do have a lovely night.